How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today I'm going to be taking a brief look at 39 Days to Mars. So this is a game that I received a key for from the developers, and it looked interesting enough, quirky enough for me to actually take a look at it. It turns out the game is relatively short. I managed to complete it in under 2 hours, but there are a lot of unique aspects to this game that I don't see oftentimes elsewhere, so I thought I'd give you a rundown on some of my thoughts on it. So to get started with, the premise is relatively straightforward. You are playing a character that has 39 days to get to Mars. Now, it doesn't appear that this is some sort of artificially imposed time limit, but at the end, your character ultimately always seems to end up getting there in 39 days, regardless of the path that he takes. Now, this is the sort of failing into success mentality that the game takes, and I personally find it quite compelling because there are a lot of analogs to it in the real world. If you think about it, a lot of your best successes in the real world were not exactly planned, and they were somewhat accidental. That is one of the existential type subtleties that the game taps into. It makes it an uncanny experience. So the game itself, as I mentioned before, is based around getting to Mars in 39 days. Now, by default, the game prompts you to play with somebody else, and that's where the main challenge of the game comes in, because the game has a lot of puzzles, and these puzzles require two players to cooperate together to complete them. Now, as you might imagine, when you're playing by yourself, and it does have single player, so you can play by yourself, it's much easier for you to work together to actually complete these puzzles and stuff. But if you were actually playing with another player, I would imagine there would be a lot more chaos involved, because the ability to communicate your objectives and intentions are the main challenge of the puzzles themselves. The puzzles themselves are relatively unique and varied. Some puzzles will require you to put a map together, hunt down a giant squid, just all kinds of wacky stuff. The game itself is quite whimsical and does not care to ground itself too firmly in reality by any means, and it is quite infused with this sepia-toned sort of steampunk world where everything is just tacked together. You have these inventions that people are coming up with in like the late 1800s, flying machines and stuff like that, and it all looks very bodged together, and bodged is a very apt word to describe this because it is a very English word to use, and the game itself is infused with that English quality. Now, when I first started playing 39 Days to Mars, I did not think it would be quite as short as it ended up being, but I feel that one of the reasons that people would continue to play after those 2 hours is because even though you can fail into success in a weird way in 39 Days to Mars, you're still encouraged to try it again because you realize you could have done much better. Your ultimate goal to reaching Mars was far from ideal, and the achievements in the game helped prompt you to explore other things about it, because some of the alternate paths to success are quite well hidden, and even I haven't figured them out. Now, I know the series is largely supposed to focus around first impressions after playing the game for a couple of hours. Usually it's 3 hours or so. As it turns out, this game, as I mentioned before, was a little bit under that. I finished it in about 2.5 hours, and I'm still doing a first impressions on it based on that, but this could actually be considered a bit more of a review at this point. So what is the potential that I see for 39 Days to Mars? Well, for one thing, you probably want to play it with somebody else, so if you're thinking of getting it yourself, it's not going to be as much fun. A lot of the challenge is going to come from you needing to communicate with another player to achieve objectives in a limited time frame. But as I mentioned before, even if the both of you continuously fail, you will ultimately succeed, so the game does not disappoint in that regard. If you're somebody who would rage easily when whomever you're playing with would let you down and allow you to fail a puzzle. I also appreciated that the game was short, because one of the problems that I've had recently is a limited amount of time to do a lot of things. I do get a fair few game keys sent to me by developers who are wanting me to take a look at their game and maybe make a video about it, but by and large, a lot of these games actually take me more than 2 hours to even develop a very primary understanding of it, and that's one of the issues with focusing on the strategy genre, which I have done for so long. So the ability for me to jump in here and just play a game in one session and finish it and be able to give you sort of my thoughts on it is somewhat valuable, and that's certainly one of the things that drew me to trying 39 Days to Mars. Now, of course, as always, I believe disclosure is important. I was not compensated in any way aside from receiving the Steam game code itself for playing this game, and there was no contractual obligation to ever make a video about it. I was simply interested in creating additional content because for the past few months, I've only been able to put out 5 or so videos per week when I'd actually prefer to be doing 7 per week because it's a lot more consistent. So if there are little games like this that pop up that that I can play in a few hours and feel that I've developed a fair sense of what the game is about to create a video about it. I think that's pretty cool. Short games I feel can oftentimes be underappreciated, and especially now with the amount of asset flipping and other nonsense getting pumped onto Steam, it's nice to find a short game that isn't a complete scam. And it's really sad that we've reached a point in time where most anytime you would see that $5 bracket on Steam, you'd immediately assume it's an asset flip or some other kind of scam. Now, the game's price might be a hurdle for some. It is a relatively short game and it still costs $15 at full price. But if you're looking for a couch co-op type experience with a bit of replayability, 39 Days to Mars could be for you. So thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.